When did the Roman Empire fall? 476 AD, right? Kind of. To understand this question a bit better, let's take a brief look at how the Roman Empire came into being. The Roman Empire began after Augustus Caesar succeeded in relinquishing the Republic and declaring himself emperor. So, how did he pull this off? In ancient Rome, the military wasn't structured in the same way it is today, where soldiers get their paycheck directly from the government. Instead, soldiers in the Roman Empire were paid directly by the generals they reported to in the form of land grants and pensions. This created a massive conflict of interest, as the loyalty of the soldiers became tied to their generals' wallets rather than the people of Rome. After a series of civil wars in which various generals competed for sole control of Rome, Augustus eventually came out on top and formed a permanent form of military dictatorship, in which the emperor keeps the soldiers paid and they keep the emperor in power. Under this system, the empire continued to expand rapidly, and as such began to require a larger and larger military to sustain itself. This would, however, require more soldiers than Italy itself could provide. As a result, the ranks of the military would become increasingly filled by those from the provinces of the empire, Gaul, Iberia, Africa, etc. Because the emperor drew his legitimacy from the consent of the military rather than the people, it was only a matter of time before this increasingly ethnically diverse military elevated a non-Roman emperor. This came in 98 AD with the ascent of Emperor Trajan, a native of Iberia. After Trajan, emperors hailing from the provinces would become the rule rather than the exception. By 212 AD, the Emperor Caracalla got rid of the distinction between Roman and non-Roman by granting citizenship to every free person within the empire's borders. From now on, everyone in the empire was a Roman, whether they were actually from Rome or not. The next major milestone in Rome's evolution came with the rise of the Emperor Diocletian. Diocletian would take a look at the empire and conclude that no one man could effectively rule such a large domain. Given this, he decided to split the empire into two regions, east and west, and then appoint a second emperor, allowing each to take personal control of one half of the empire. Today, we call these two halves the Eastern and Western Roman Empire, but it's worth pointing out that the Romans themselves still thought of themselves as one empire. Under this new system, Diocletian took control of the eastern half and didn't personally visit the city of Rome at all during his 20-year reign. This policy of neglecting Rome itself was consummated by Emperor Constantine, who would move the capital of the empire from Rome to Constantinople. Over the ensuing decades, the East would rise in its wealth and prestige, and Rome itself would become a forgotten relic of ever-decreasing importance. Even in the western half of the empire, Rome would be eclipsed by the growing city of Milan. Over the 400s AD, the Roman Empire would begin to feel the combined effects of ineffective leadership and a series of invasions by a group of nomads called the Huns. The Huns arrived on the scene in Europe in the 300s AD and began ravaging the various tribes in Eastern Europe and modern Germany. As a result, these battered tribes began fleeing to the Roman Empire for protection and a new land to call home. When many of these tribes arrived at the Roman doorstep only to find the gates shut to them, they chose to invade rather than turn back and face annihilation at the hands of the Huns. During this period of unchecked migration and invasion, the government and army fell into complete disarray. At a time when the Western Empire desperately needed unity and strong leadership, it received neither. Emperors during this period were unable to hold on to power, and rival after rival made claim to the throne, keeping the empire in an almost constant state of civil war. Over the 400s AD, the Romans would withdraw from Britain, see Rome itself sacked 3 times, and lose control of Gaul, Iberia, Africa, and Illyria. On the eve of its destruction, the Western Empire was reduced only to control of Italy. In 476 AD, the last official Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the general Odoacer. This is the point at which most historians say that the Western Roman Empire fell. It's worth noting, however, that the only thing which distinguished Odoacer from every other general-turned-usurper is that he failed to gain the official blessing of the Eastern Empire. Odoacer nevertheless ruled Italy for 17 years until the year 493, when he was toppled by yet another general named Theodoric. What makes Theodoric unique is that unlike Odoacer, he received the full blessing of the Eastern Empire and set up a dynasty in Italy that would last until the year 553. This makes dating the actual fall of the empire quite murky, and I think we could fairly say that it fell somewhere between 476 and 553. But after 553 it definitely fell, right? Well, yes, but not to foreign invaders. Italy would in fact fall to the Roman Empire. You see, in the east, the Emperor Justinian had risen to the throne with the goal of reunifying the Roman Empire and sent an army west to reconquer Italy, and he did a pretty good job of it. After Justinian's death, however, Italy would fall back into chaos, and it's safe to say that by the end of the 500s, the Western Roman Empire was broken and completely unrecognizable. The Eastern Empire, however, was getting along without much of a hitch. Although the West had fallen into total chaos and the empire no longer controlled its Italian homeland, the people of the Eastern Empire still thought of themselves as Roman. As mentioned previously, the Roman Empire had long since ceased to be Roman in the purest sense of the word. They had long been ruled by non-Roman emperors, and the city of Rome hadn't been the capital for centuries. But despite all of this, the Eastern Empire would continue to call itself Roman and use Latin as an official language until it was finally toppled by the Ottomans in the year 1453. It's interesting to note, however, that upon conquering Constantinople, the Ottoman Emperor Mehmed II took the title Caesar of the Roman Empire and saw his empire as a successor to the Roman Empire. Although most in the West never acknowledged this claim, Mehmed certainly styled himself in this fashion. In a similar vein, back in the West in the year 800, the Germanic Emperor Charlemagne had himself declared Holy Roman Emperor with the blessing of the Roman Catholic Pope. Under Charlemagne, the Holy Roman Empire would expand to control most of modern France and Central Europe, including Rome itself. In the West, the Holy Roman Empire would continue until 1806, and in the East, the Ottoman Empire would continue until 1923. But were these empires Roman in any meaningful sense, though? In my view, the answer is it's complicated. Had Julius Caesar been able to see the Roman Empire under Constantine in the 300s, he would have hardly been able to recognize it. In Caesar's time, the empire was still a republic, Rome was a shining capital, and polytheism was dominant. Under Constantine, the empire was a complete autocracy, Rome itself had become a forgotten backwater, and polytheism had almost been entirely replaced by Christianity. When looking at the history of the Roman Empire, it's easy to overlook the fact that by the time the Eastern Empire fell, it had been in existence for 2,206 years. There isn't a single date we can point to and say, here is when Rome stopped existing. There were many milestones in its evolution and decline. The first non-Roman emperor, the move of the capital to Constantinople, the fall of the West, the fall of Constantinople. But none of them mark a particularly definitive end to the Roman Empire. Rome wasn't defined by control of a particular region, the reign of a particular dynasty, or its adherence to a particular religion. It was instead an ever-changing cultural identity that dominated most of Europe for almost 2 millennia, that would slowly evolve out of existence. Thanks for watching.